So, venues are very important. It's the location, the amenities, the experience, as you said, is a big part of it.
Yeah.
But really, you're trying, again, to get people to feel so passionate about it that it wouldn't matter where you played, when you played, how you played, they're still going to support you. And I think a big part of that in Indiana is because of the real pride that people in Indiana have as real Hoosiers. It's important that the team reflects the people and the character of the state. And, that comes in a number of ways. The obvious way is to have as many Indiana native soccer players and coaches and staff as possible. Players and coaches that the fans can relate to is really important. But it's also just getting the input from the community and giving back to the community in charitable ways and in time, having the players out in the community giving of themselves. So there's various ways to do that, but the end result is that it will feel like Indiana's team. I know when I was in Minnesota, I was there for 4 wonderful seasons with the Minnesota Thunder in the 90s before going to Chicago. We had a slogan, and we lived the slogan. It was the world's game and Minnesota's team. And again, it wasn't just a slogan. The players, the entire team was from Minnesota. I mean, you talk about a mom and pop operation. This truly was, in that Mr. and Mrs. Lagos, Coach Lagos and his wife and his kids were responsible for starting the team and running it, along with Tom Engstrom and his parents, and then the players and their moms and dads. I remember John Mank, one of our players from Minnesota, his mother ran the box office. And it was crazy. We only had 2 full-time staff, but we had 20 or 30 volunteers that were really running the team. The players were all from Minnesota. And by the way, they weren't on the team just because they're from Minnesota. They were on the team because they were darn good.
Yeah.
They're the best team in the country in the regular season the year before Major League Soccer started. And it gave Major League Soccer several players, including Tony Sana, Manny Lagos, and Amos McGee.
And that's interesting you brought that up, because one thing we do have a plethora of right now there are a lot of players from Indiana. They have Indiana roots. They played at Butler, IUPUI, IU, or they're just up and coming youth and youngsters from everywhere from Westfield, Carmel. I mean, you name it. So we certainly have the potential to build not a maybe 100% all Hoosier team, Indiana team, but pretty darn close.
You guys sent me, Derek, I think it was you, sent me a list of Indiana alumni, not necessarily University of Indiana, but from the state of Indiana, products that have gone on to play and coach professionally the other day. And I kind of knew this was a really, really good state, but I saw that list and I was really blown away. I was really impressed by it. And I had the chance to sit down and talk last week with Todd Yeagley and Brian Mazanov, the coaches at Indiana University, and we talked about that. And they said that this would be a really good thing for their players, some of them who maybe aren't quite ready for Major League Soccer to play in Europe, or maybe they are ready, but they might be reserves, so maybe they want to play a year or two in the NASL where they're getting regular play. And they absolutely thought that we could stock the team with Indiana natives and have a very competitive team.
Quite frankly, Peter, you just stole my point. I was going to say, with the MLS draft over the past handful of years, if not longer, I mean, IU alone has sent in 2, 3, sometimes even 4, depending on the team, into MLS. But there is always the rest of the team that might not move on to a professional league or anything like that. And they may move on just as far as the workforce is concerned. And I mean, having an actual second division team here would be a great, basically a great spot for them to start their career, if not, move on to better things later on.
Absolutely. And I think it would also serve to grow the game in the state. It would serve to inspire young players. It would serve to give them aspirational heroes so that more kids get involved in the sport, and importantly, more kids stay in the sport longer, and they see the potential of committing to the sport. So I think it's a win-win for everybody, but it's still just talk at this point, and a lot needs to happen before it becomes reality.
I got an interesting question from Simon Allen on Worldwide Soccer last week, and he said, he asked me, how does a team in Indianapolis compete with teams like the New York Cosmos, who may have the money, we don't know if they're going to spend it yet, to go out and get, 1, 2, 3, bigger name players. I mean, do you see that as any sort of, is there a risk there at all? I think I talked to James Hope of the San Antonio Crocketeers as well, and he brought that up as well. I don't think he was really extremely concerned, but, it was something that we talked about and an issue that was discussed.
Exhibit A, the 2011 NASL Soccer Bowl champion Minnesota Stars, the lowest payroll by far in the NASL. Exhibit B, the 2012 NASL Soccer Bowl finalists, and leading 2-0 going into the second leg, Minnesota Stars. Again, the lowest payroll in the league, and they've proven that soccer is a team sport, not an individual sport, and salary budgets alone do not make a champion.
Amen.
That being said, I will assure you that this group of investors looking at bringing a team to Indiana would plan on being competitive in every regard with their team.
Good.
A player that is going to be getting up there in age as far as soccer's concerned, that has Hoosier backings, that I would love to see brought in. And say, because the rumor was always 2014 as potential starting time. A player who I'd like to see would be Damarcus Beasley. Whether or not he's ready to basically move back home to Indiana and play for a Division II team is left to be seen. But he'll only be 32 by that point. Whether or not he still has years at a higher level, I don't know. But
Damarcus is a good friend of mine, and I actually traded for him on draft day in 2000 to get him from the Los Angeles Galaxy to the Chicago Fire, and he has several good years left for him. With him, he's with Pueblo in the Mexican Football League now. He recently stated publicly that he would like to come back and to MLS at some point and play for the Chicago Fire. And he is obviously not only a talented player, but a good person and a local hero and a national hero, really. It's important that any team at any level has a good range of leaders and youth and experience. The key to the championship teams we had in Chicago, and we won 4 Open Cups there, a Supporters Shield and MLS Cup. We were runners-up 2 other times in MLS Cup and another time in the Open Cup. The key with those teams was having experienced leaders blended with young, up-and-coming talent so that the experienced leaders could set the right example. They had to have good character, work rate, as well as talent, and show that to the younger players. And I think you're right in that in Indiana you have a range of talented players at all ages that you could easily fill a roster that would be representative of all those tiers of experience.
Yeah. I think the key for Damarcus, of course, is just staying healthy. But, Jonah Freeman, who's been on the show a few times, recently wrote an article for MLS Soccer. .com, and it was about NASL, and that there were partnership talks that were kind of ongoing that have NASL and MLS kind of finding or trying to find a way to combine and maybe having the MLS reserves in or teams in their system. But of course, we've heard the same thing regarding USL Pro. I don't know what you know about the situation, but do you have anything that you can tell us about this seemingly endless discussion that's going on?
Yeah, I don't have any firsthand knowledge of it, but I will just say that it is important that the NASL is part of the development of American players. It's an important role. There's a gap for players that isn't, and actually Todd Yeagley brought this up to me when we were meeting, that there's a gap for the development of young American players, specifically the ones he was talking about that are just out of college and trying to get to the professional level, that a lot of them are either falling through the cracks and not getting good games or good training sessions with good teams, or they're just getting out of the game and they're not being given a chance to develop at all. So I absolutely believe that having another connection between Major League Soccer and the lower divisions would be beneficial for the game, and hopefully the NASL can serve in that role with Major League Soccer. But the NASL can also serve in that role with leagues around the world, not just Major League Soccer.
Right.
They can partner, and that's part of the reason Traffic USA has such a commitment to the North American Soccer League, is because their connections in Brazil are natural for having players, whether on loan or transfer, go from Brazil to the U.S. to Europe or vice versa.
Right.
Well, and the one thing that I took from Jonah's article that I expect to continue having is the increase in number of loans from MLS to NASL teams.
Yeah,
and
I think so. I mean, with the whole reserve league situation hasn't panned out maybe in the way it was written on the chalkboard. So they are looking for other solutions, and loaning players is one way to get it done.
One of the things
you're trying. I'm sorry. At the end of the day, you're trying to get the young players quality games and quality training sessions.
Right.
And they're not always getting that when they're sitting on the bench in MLS.
Right. And and that was one of the things I really liked about David Downs before he resigns, of course, pretty recently. But David was always about, hey, we are not going to dilute, the NASL. We want to compete. We want to go out there and compete for fans. And I hope, and I don't know if you have any news on this, that's kind of the same. I don't know if you'd say chutzpah, but that's the kind of attitude I think the NASL needs in a leader, and leadership is so important. I don't know if you're a candidate again for this position, but I don't know. Could you speak to that issue at all?
I think you're right that attitude is the one that's actually reflective of the ownership of the teams in the NASL, and it was a big part of why I think the NASL wanted to split away from the USL and create their own road, is because they rightly believed that they could forge their own identity and have their own position in the soccer marketplace in the United States, not just a Tier 2 subservient league to another league.